is the deal, Wiz fam? Y'all already know what the hell this is. Most disturbing encounters in the woods. Look, I don't even venture toward the woods, bro. Like, they say beautiful, but nah. But without further ado, let's get into it. Make sure y'all come over here and give my man Mr. Nightmare a sub and a like. And be sure to hit that like button on the channel and the sub button on the channel as well. Let's get into it.
In 2014, a man named Ethan and his wife Danny were spending a weekend together on Vancouver Island, which they had done many times before. The couple has a lot of experience on the island and just camping in general. Vancouver Island provides an optimal camping setting because of its mix of scenic beaches and dense forest. The couple had many successful camping trips on the island, until something truly terrifying happened to them on their final outing on the island. Ethan and Danny were far from any roads or civilization, enjoying the solitude. They set up camp on a beach a good distance from anywhere and kept a fire going. To get to the trail leaving the beach was a kilometer along the beach and 2 kilometers to the road through the forest. The couple had met another camper named Leon from New Zealand, who they ran into earlier that day on the beach. Leon was planning on sleeping in his van, which he parked back up on the road. The couple invited him down to the beach for a fire, and the three shared a bottle of wine, talking amongst themselves around the fire. This is where things started to get a little creepy. The sun was starting to go down by this point, and the trio kept hearing what sounded like female voices from behind them in the bushes dividing the beach from the forest. It wasn't too dark out yet though, so it was still possible that they were just other hikers or campers nearby, or even a group who anchored offshore and the sound was just bouncing in a weird way. All three of them could agree that they were hearing female voices though. On that note, it was getting late and a little dark, so Leon said goodbye and set out to hike back to his car before it was too dark. Ethan and Danny stayed by their campsite and stoked the fire because Danny was starting to get creeped out by the voices, which continued on into the darkness. It sounded like 2 female voices speaking, but whatever that was being said was unintelligible. It sounded to the couple like the voices were not far beyond the tree line now. They stayed up very late tending to the fire, and only when the voices had finally stopped, they decided to put out the fire and go to sleep in the tent. Before doing so, the two had scanned the cove with a flashlight several times looking for boats that could have been the source of the talking, but there was nothing in sight. It was around 3 a.m. when they laid down finally, ready to catch some shut-eye. But about 15 minutes after they laid down, Ethan and Danny heard footsteps in the area around their campsite, over by where the fire was. They came from the direction of the bushes toward the inland behind them, a direction that was not traversable by people. The couple lay there, hoping it was just a bear or any animal, because the only bears on the island are black bears, which usually are very timid around people. The footsteps went from the fire, then over to the tent, then back into the woods. 5 minutes later, the footsteps came back again to the fire, and now, clear as day, there were 2 female voices talking gibberish very loudly. Their communication was not resembling any languages known to Ethan or Danny, and they seemed to be talking over each other, having what could barely be considered to be a conversation at full volume in the dead of night very far away from civilization without using lights to navigate through the dense brush relatively quietly in a direction that seemed impossible to traverse on foot. The 2 voices moved from the fire pit area over to the tent, still talking at a loud volume. They stood over the tent talking for a few seconds, then went completely dead as night silent. They went back into the woods to never be seen or heard again. Ethan and Danny lay there completely frozen and afraid for a long time. They woke up around 11 a.m. the next day because of how late they fell asleep. They packed up first thing and never returned. The couple probably made the best decision to remain quiet in the tent, not drawing attention to themselves from whoever or whatever was outside the tent. The following pictures you're about to see were taken by hikers Kylie Cashwell and John Stone, who both live in Eagle Mountain, Utah, a small town south of Salt Lake City. For the past few years, they had been exploring forests in search of interesting things, and one day they found it. One day Kylie was hiking in Cedar Fort, just 5 miles south of Salt Lake City. While hiking, she found large amounts of animal bones and piles of junk people had dumped. But things started to get strange when she started coming across strange symbols and animal parts scattered throughout the forest, some of them in weird formations. On September 15th, she decided to bring her friend Josh along with her to show him in person the unusual things she was finding. This time, the two came across something even more disturbing. On the trail, there was a severed deer head and a pentagram surrounded by deer legs, which which were not there the first time Kylie walked the trail. The sun was going down, and after getting their pictures, they agreed it was time to head back to the car. But the more they walked, they realized they didn't recognize the path they were on. So the two start looking around for anything that could refresh their memory of where they were. But as it got dark out, the two accepted that they were lost. With nothing but their phone flashlights to navigate, they started getting the feeling they were being watched. As they picked up their pace, the two started to hear the trees and bushes moving at least 20 feet to their right, made more concerning by the fact that there was no wind that night. The two started to panic and hurried onto a trail they found, hoping it would take them back to Kylie's car. Just when things couldn't seem to get any worse, Kylie and Josh heard a scream so deep and horrific that it sounded neither human nor animal. The two sprinted down the trail, Kylie making a conscious effort not to look back, but Josh did. And Josh claimed to see a large black figure on the trail behind them, too big to be a human. The two made it to the car by some stroke of luck, losing whatever was chasing them. So they left the forest and went straight home. Upon doing research, Kylie found documents of common cult practices reported in those woods, as well as numerous murders and disappearances that happened in the area throughout the years. Like Ethan and Danny in the first story, Kylie has not returned since.
Yeah, man, be careful going in. Motherfuckers be doing some weird shit in them woods, man. For real.
Deep in the woods in northern Germany, two friends were hiking in an area formerly territory of the German Democratic Republic when they came across these strange periscope-like pipes protruding from the ground. Feeling either brave or foolish, they decided to investigate further. They discovered a doorway hidden behind several bushes, covered by a large wooden lid. What they found hidden beneath the ground is a pretty disturbing piece of history. The doorway led to a huge abandoned army bunker. There were several tunnels leading off in different directions, which intersected a long central corridor. There were so many different directions to go that exploring the place felt like going through a maze to the two friends. They tried not to stray far away from each other in fear of getting lost. That's how big the place was. As they ventured deeper into the structure, they came across German writing on the wall, which translated to "help." Curiosity still got the better of them, and they continued deeper into the bunker. And as they did,
ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for
more and more decayed. More writings were found on the walls, this time reading, "Hello Satan, I love you." Some of the rooms and corridors were flooded and smelled like sewage. They made their way into a very large room with a strange machine in the center. It's very possible the previous occupants had fled the bunker in a hurry, as there was a single shoe still stuck in the sludge on the floor. Why wouldn't someone have time to grab one shoe unless they were in a hurry? The structure was believed to be an old military bunker, possibly used for shelter by the Nazis during World War II. But why did the soldiers seemingly leave in such a hurry? And whether they were the ones who had written the warning messages on the walls is unknown. In this last story, for the person's safety, I'll refer to him as just Bill. Bill is an avid hiker who in 2016 was visiting his brother upstate New York near Downsville. Bill's brother owns a small house and a barn up there, and from time to time Bill and other family members would go up to visit. This was in the late fall, and so the foliage was already mostly orange, and more than half of the leaves had fallen off the trees. Bill was hiking a narrow trail which was not far from his brother's place. This trail is in the middle of a very rural area, and it connects from the occasional property to property. So when Bill stumbled across a duffel bag on the ground in the middle of the woods, it was a surprise. The duffel bag looked like it was relatively new. It didn't look dirty as if it had been sitting in the woods for an extended period of time. There was a foul odor emanating from the bag, however, like something rotting inside. Bill assumed the worst, but he knew he had to open the bag to see what's inside in case it actually could have been a person. He was building up the courage to open the zipper to the bag, but before he could, he heard footsteps approaching from off the trail and a voice saying, "That's mine, please don't touch it." A large man in a dirty jacket and jeans was quickly approaching from the woods and grabbed the duffel bag off the ground. The two exchanged looks for a moment. Bill told the man he assumed the bag was forgotten by someone, and the man told him he was storing his kill from his hunt in the bag. Even though Bill isn't a hunter, he knew it's standard to use a cooler for storing fresh kill. not a duffel bag of all things. This also wouldn't explain the foul smell so soon, as usually dead bodies only start to smell after a few days, not right after death. So he apologized and continued walking down the trail, with a little more speed in his step. It's likely the man noticed Bill's nervousness, because he heard the duffel bag get dropped on the floor as he was walking away, but as he looked back, he didn't see the man anymore. Bill nervously continued along the trail, taking out his phone to try to call his brother for an emergency pickup by the road, but he didn't have any reception in the woods. All he could do was press forward and avoid crossing paths with that man again. But as he continued on, he kept hearing leaves crunching from not far behind him, and any time he'd look back, the coast seemed clear. But eventually, his fear that he was being followed became real. He saw that man following him in the distance in a stalkerish manner, hiding behind a tree. Without thinking, Bill started to run as fast as he could down the trail. He knew he was being followed without even looking back because he could hear the leaves being crushed for not too far behind him. Bill came to an abandoned-looking property with overgrown grass, and having grown too winded to continue running, he attempted entry to the old house through the back door, and was able to get inside. Bill hid under a cot in the first bedroom he found, and he heard the back door open again, followed by heavy footsteps moving in a hurry. They went from room to room, and Bill could hear the man's heavy breathing from also being out of breath. The man's footsteps came into the bedroom just for a second and left right after. He didn't look under either of the two cots. Bill heard the back door to the house open and slam shut again, but he laid under the cot for another half an hour, not taking any risks. He only got up when he realized it would be dark soon, and he needed to get to a road to call for help. He proceeded to leave the house and run down the dirt trail by the house that was most likely once used as a driveway, which led him to a road. From here, he eventually hitched a ride with a passing car, who gave Bill a lift back to his brother's house, where Bill would call the local police department and report his encounter. Given the severity of the case, police would show up to the house to get a more detailed description of the man's face, the location it happened, and other information. Though it was never technically confirmed what was in that duffel bag, the rotting smell would already be clue enough. But the fact that the man so intently chased after Bill shows that he was hiding something that he didn't want any witnesses for, most likely dumping a dead body.
Man, that is some eerie shit. The last one got me. Because that's not some shit that you want to hear walking through the woods, man. You definitely don't want to hear that shit. But that's going to do it for that one. Make sure you hit that like button on this one. It might be Mr. Nightmare with that like. But until the next one, we out. But definitely stay safe if y'all going to go in the woods. And pack that 9, man. Pack that 9 millimeter.